and thank you for being here. We appreciate that you took some time to join us this evening. We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own, said Cesar Chavez. Community. From the Latin root, communis, two definitions of this word I think are vital for us to think about. The first is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. In this way, we are made a community by our location largely. And the second, it is the people of a district or country considered collectively, especially within the context of social values and responsibilities. And if we adopt this definition, we then face our values and meet our responsibilities as a community. For being a community doesn't simply mean that we share the same space. That's the easy part. It actually means that we share our labor in defining our future together. This struggle has been made very real for us as a people over the past few months, as echoes of McCarthyism can be heard in the public discourse when it comes to race and gender and class. And it's especially painful in a community such as ours, where racial diversity is rich and growing and now a majority. And so, in this first week of the new year, to reflect upon our community values and responsibilities, to consider not only what we believe, but what we will do together. Marian Wright Edelman was right. It's a time for greatness, not for greed. It's a time for idealism, not for ideology. It is a time not just for compassionate words, but compassionate action. So much of America's tragic and costly failure to care for all of our children stems from our tendency to distinguish between our children and other people's children, as if justice were somehow divisible. And so this evening, we must reflect and promise to act upon what is just in opportunities and resources. To improve student learning and achievement in our community, there are three priorities in our work: opportunity, time, and funding. And I'll start with opportunity. Currently, 45% of Maryland's children are impacted by poverty. Here in Montgomery County, that number is even higher. We must build relationships and close opportunity gaps. We must build a bridge between the two Montgomery counties, and we must show our commitment to equity now. Too many times, children struggle to find meaning in activities after school and yearn for a mentor to assist them in growth. Yet when we look at the current landscape, these supports are poorly funded, they lack coherence, comprehensiveness, and/or standards for quality. Our children deserve more. We must double the number of after-school programs for children. We must provide mentors and meaningful activities to children who need them. We must create a master plan for aligning this work. We must invest in community schools. When children are well and their families don't have to worry, we have provided them with dignity and honor as they go through their day. Linkages to learning works. We know it because it brings medical and other services to communities in need. We should fully fund the existing centers as they exist now, and then we should double the number of school-based health centers. Quite simply, we need to expand the community schools model because we recognize that the schoolhouse is the heart of any community. Starting early and starting right makes sense for our children, our system, and our community. Quality pre-kindergarten programs are essential in closing opportunity gaps. In fact, Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman estimates that for every dollar that we spend in pre-K programming, 10 cents returns annually throughout the life of that child. No matter how you slice that, that's a real easy investment decision early on. We know if we arrive at the kindergarten classroom, and we know that if we arrive at that classroom door together and ready to learn, great things will happen. It is our moral and economic imperative to bring all children ready to that door so that each and every one of our babies can be successful and powerfully equipped to learn. I believe we must implement universal pre-K countywide, and we must do it by 2020. We must lead over the line. We must create the opportunities where none exist now. We must find the courage to get there. If I said lead over the line, some of you may have referenced the person I'm going to play a short clip of next. Viola Davis, in accepting her Emmy for drama, the first African-American woman in history to do so, describes the opportunity gap, I think, in clear and plain and stark detail. And when we listen to her, we can think about who the writers and architects are for our children. Oops.
I see a line, and over that line I see green fields and lovely flowers and beautiful white women with their arms stretched out to me over that line, but I can't seem to get there no how. I can't seem to get over that line. That was Harriet Tubman in the 1800s. And let me tell you something. The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there. So here's to all the writers, the awesome people that are Ben Sherwood, Paul Lee, Peter Nowak, Shonda Rhimes, people who have redefined what it means to be beautiful, to be sexy, to be a leading woman, to be black. And to the Taraji P. Hensons, the Kerry Washingtons, the Halle Berrys, the Nicole Beharies, the Megan Goods, to Gabrielle Union, thank you for taking us over that line. Thank you for the Television Academy. Thank you.
Each day, especially those of us who teach in Title I schools, stand with children who need a writer, who need an architect to help create the opportunities that don't exist, to close a gap that they can't get out by themselves. And it won't come through wishful thinking or without addressing some real elephants in our community. Race and class matter. Poverty matters. Reconnecting children to the community, we show them and not merely tell them that their lives matter, and we are committed and dedicated to their success. It is up to us to do one simple thing, that is to make this. That's opportunity. But the next thing we focus on comes down to time. Because in education, time has become a precious and scarce resource for us, thanks in large part to standardized testing. We must support less testing and more time for learning. We see the authorization of ESSA as an opportune moment to establish a state opportunity dashboard which measures things that really matter. Things like class size, teacher experience, student-to-counselor ratio, access to advanced courses, quality after-school and summer programming, the list goes on and on. What gets measured gets done. We've got to measure the right things, and that's what we need to do in an opportunity dashboard. We also support, frankly, a 2% cap on the amount of instructional time used for any mandated testing so that we can spend more time on learning. I've had the chance to review ESSA in my spare time when I'm not teaching, to look over the 1,000-some pages. And one of the things that I have found intriguing, as I've talked with some of you about, is this premise. ESSA authorizes the U.S. Secretary of Education to grant up to 7 states an opportunity to move away from standardized testing and use authentic measures of student learning instead. Some districts in New York have been doing this for years. They've been using these authentic measures of student learning through rich, multiple assessments. Here's my premise. Maryland should closely examine this option as a state to be one of those 7 states. We should do this because it would allow us to move away from Park and do something that we know measures things that matter. I don't want to be the last state left holding Park. Okay? With the power of our education professionals in this state, we can choose now to move away from test and punish to assess and learn. The door is now open. We should take a very close look at this right now while the door is open. We know it's that connection and engagement to school matters. We've heard the stories of students who take tests, often not aligned with learning, getting results months after the tests are complete, resulting in tears during the test and anguish after the test, and quite frankly, it makes us sick. This time, or this, is now. It's time for the right accountability, which will in turn allow us to refocus on the resource of time. So if opportunity and time are there, then we move to funding. Funding actually is a matter of relationships, and here's how. Relationships connect us. Class size matters. Relationships form the very fabric of our community and our schools. And so the latest report from the Community Foundation in our community has to be alarming to everyone in this room, because it shows a disconnection between too many children and our community. Unaddressed, this fraying of the quilt will eventually pull us apart. It will weaken our collective abilities. As teachers, we've all felt this frustration in our work as we struggle to connect with more and more children in less and less time. And that's what I mean by relationships and funding. The larger the class size, the less we can build relationships. The smaller the class size, the more supports we have, the more relationships can be built, and that fabric and that quilt can be sustained. Which takes me to this. Restoration, right? Because restoration is needed to bring about healing to our community, to repair relationships by renewing our collective commitment to schools and our children, by restoring the cuts in local spending for each of our 156,000 children. Cuts which have now gone on 2,400 days. 2,400 days with a total of about $200 million per year. To make whole and heal the relationships, to reconnect ourselves to the work and the children entrusted to our care, by reducing class size and enhancing arts education, to care for the adults who care for our children by making sure educators' pay, benefits, and working conditions honor the craft and profession that we are in. We need to add these dollars to the MCPS budget on top of what the superintendent has asked for. We need to add these dollars, and we will work with the county executive and the county council to fund this budget. We need to keep existing revenue sources in place. During these tight fiscal times, it makes no sense to lose revenue. Therefore, we oppose the ballot initiative to privatize liquor sales in the county, a move that would result in the loss of 250 middle-class union jobs with good pay and benefits, and it would blow a hole in the budget of $30 to $35 million annually. That doesn't make sense now. We can't support that. Over the past 7 years, here are the figures. The MCPS student population has grown by 19,000, more than anywhere else in the state. At the same time, local spending has dropped by 6,000 over the course of that 7 years. 6 million, sorry, I was never good at math. And per pupil spending has dropped 1,200. There is no doubt that we have suffered through a tremendous economic challenge. But let there be no doubt that teachers and educators have also suffered through a challenge in this. And let there be no doubt that my young scholars at Blair High School, where I taught for 14 years, have suffered because of this. Having said that, I will quote Susan L. Taylor, who was editor of Essence magazine. In reflecting on her career, she wrote, "Whatever we believe about ourselves and our ability comes true for us." These past 7 years have tested our soul, but this is not who we are. This position we are in is not what we believe about ourselves or about this community. For Dr. King speaks to us in this moment when he writes, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And so my colleagues and friends, get ready to push on that arc, because we are going to engage this community and bend our history to meet the calling of justice. Dr. King knew the power of organized action, of thousands of hands pushing on the arc to bend its curve, and so should we. They are trying times. These are not the first such times that we'll have, and surely they will not be the last. One of my favorite Nigerian proverbs states this: "In the moment of crisis, the wise build bridges, and the foolish build dams." We can see the growing needs of our children in this community, like rising water. And if we seek to keep doing what we've always done, we're going to have to build a higher dam. And eventually, it will fail. Or we can unleash the potential of all of our children, building bridges instead to the future, and allowing them to alter the landscape downstream in ways that we can only imagine. And along this new river, new life will actually be found. Abundant new life with prosperity founded on relationships, because we demonstrated in this time that we believe in the youngest members of our community. This is our calling. This is our path. It is time for greatness. It is time for justice. We know that when I becomes we, illness is transformed into wellness. Malcolm X said that. May we, as a community of shared values and responsibilities, make it our work to make other people's children well. Thank you, and may this new year be one of transformation.